What's up, people? It is Dave. It is Duncan back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. For this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from UK melancholic folk rock trio 40 Watt Sun. The band's new album, Little Wait, will be released on September 6th via Fisher's Folly. Little Wait is the follow-up to 2022's Perfect Light, an album that was written and recorded over a long time period with a wide cast of musicians. For Little Wait, 40 Watt Sun's Patrick Walker was determined to simplify the record-making process and recapture more of the rawness and spontaneity of the band's earliest recordings. Setting aside a designated amount of time, under specific, often isolated conditions, the crafting of the songs that make up Little Wait took place. The initial writing settings were a solitary endeavour. Walker rented a remote cottage on the Cornwall coast, locking himself away. Days took on a familiar rhythm, long walks on deserted beaches and coastal paths early each morning, followed by intensive writing sessions throughout the days, before retiring each evening to read by the fire in a nearby pub. During this 3-week period, he wrote each of the songs that now form Little Wait. The next step was to fly to Gotland, Sweden, where he would unite with drummer and longtime collaborator Andrew Prestige to further work on the musical arrangements and record basic demos. Once again, the scheduled location lended itself to a focused and swift creative process. The resulting demo recordings were then shared with bass player Roland Scriver before all three convened back in the UK, retreating to a house in the Peak District to rehearse and refine the songs. The final location also offered a distraction-free period of time to focus before the trio entered Holy Mountain Studios in London to record in December 2023. Engineering and mixing was undertaken by Chris Fullard, who has worked with Sun, Idols and Ulver, who was assisted by Stanley Gravitt, before Adam Gonsalves mastered the tracks in Portland, Oregon. Okay. So... Yeah, so I suppose to give context, we reviewed the previous 40 Watt Sun album, Perfect Light, back in 2022. Both big fans of that release.
Fucking floored me. We got it, I think we got it in the December, and then the album wasn't out until the January, so we spent pretty much Christmas, like a 2-3 week period with this album, and it kind of floored me. It wasn't what I was expecting. I felt very vulnerable listening to it, and I got to the end of it and I was like, there's only one score this can get and it's the top one. How do you mark this down? It'd be like punching a puppy. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's a pure fucking good. So I, like, you apparently told me that they were doing something this year and I struck it from the memory. Or the more believable, Dave didn't mention it, kept it to maybe Dave said it to himself, assuming I could hear him miles away, and then it landed. But I was surprised when the first single dropped for this, and that I wasn't expecting anything as quick. And then when we did our reaction to it, I was more taken back by the more focused band feel of the track, which is not prevalent on the previous album as much, where it feels much more a solitary effort. So I think you said, and then I agreed with you at that point, that we would do no more listening of singles, we'd wait for the album to come in.
I just wanted to kind of immerse myself in the album. I didn't want to do it kind of piece by piece. After we heard that first track, I was like, I want to wait. I just want to hear it, the whole thing.
It's like me with like a box of like fucking, you know, like a box of good chocolates. You know, the ones that come in where like there's some of them are more on the coffee side and some of them are more that dark chocolate that no one else in the household eats, and I'm just like, I'll let them gobble away at their popular chocolates because I know that when they leave, the rest is mine. I'm going to go into some secluded little area and gorge myself on it, which is kind of what a 40 Watt Sun album really is for me. It's a gorging experience.
Well, what did you make of Little Wait? Was it a box of chocolates, Duncan? What did you make of it?
Well, a great philosopher once said that life is like a box of chocolates, Dave. You never know what you're gonna get. The counter to that is if you check the little label inside, it tells you what you're going to get. This album did not come with a little label inside. And this kind of allegory, metaphor, or whatever it is to preamble, segue us into this one here was not thought out or planned in advance. As a result, it's now floundering like a fish looking for water. So, here's the thing about 40 Watson. I think we mentioned before on the previous review, and we've mentioned it already tonight, which kind of feel like we're treading water a lot here with our descriptions. There are certain bands that release albums that are mood albums.
Sure.
Right? When we say mood albums, we mean that you need to be in the right frame of mind, the right headspace. Generally, a certain time of the day will acclimate your experience, but they're albums that are designed specifically to, like, if I'm having the worst day in the world, I don't know if I'm listening to a 40 Watson album, you know what I mean? Yeah. If I've just come off a half an hour being held on hold to sort out my heating bill, I don't know if I'm shoving 40 Watson on. You know what I mean? It's not that there's Raining Blood maybe or something along those lines. I have to be in the right headspace at the right time, and that's what we mean when we say mood albums. They accentuate a mood, and if you're not in that mood, they might not connect the same way. I already knew that coming into this. Thankfully, we'd done an album before, so I was like, "This is quiet time. This is nice quiet room." Solitary experience, good headphones on, close your eyes and just kind of wash away on the waves of the music. But I also remember distinctly the previous album, and the previous album, like I mentioned before, felt very much like a man on the shore with a guitar, just pouring his heart and soul out to the world, almost into the void, not knowing whether or not there would be an answer, the same way that someone would write a message in a bottle and throw it into the water and not know if anyone would ever be able to read that message. There's a kind of melancholic sadness that comes with that, putting out a question and maybe never knowing if it's going to be answered. So I had that distinct sound. We'd listened to the single, and the single sounded more band focused, which excited me, because I don't know if I want another like fucking 60-minute like album like that. I kind of want something that feels more band and more structured, and that's what Little Weight brings. This one is far more structured along more traditional lines, but don't get your knickers in a twist. This is still a 40 Watson album, so as a result there is plenty of time to explore the repetitiveness, I can't say that word, the use of repeat functions of playing the same thing over and over again. It's English, it's malleable, right?
Well done.
So the fact that like riffs will loop and loop again, and all that really changes is a nuance in the vocal. It's kind of where this band shines. I could listen to this guy sing forever. Like, honestly, see, when you were describing him sitting at like with a book in a Cornish pub somewhere in front of a roaring fire, I pictured him singing the book when you said that to me. Oh no, turn the page, chapter 3. You know what I mean? I just had this in my head that that's what he'd be doing, because why would he not be doing that? You know what I mean? There's a wee fucking Springer Spaniel or a wee beagle at the side of him. It's like every now and again rustling it behind the ears. A wee shite. You know what I mean?
Like a bunnet or something.
Bunnet. Like one of those like fucking body warmer things.
Tweed, maybe.
Always tweed, or like you get the fuck out. Tweed or you're burned in a wicker man. That's how it works. Maybe a pipe for decoration. Never smoke it.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to damage the vocals. But it's there, and just every now and again you lift up and everyone's like, oh, and you go, no. You tap it on the end of the book, and you point it with a sharp pointy end, like at the fucking barkeep for another beer.
Another whiskey barman.
Another whiskey barman. Yeah. It's a gorgeously intimate album. In any other world, a lot of what I will say about this is positives, I would strip down as fucking negatives. Like, it's an album that doesn't really want to get to the point, because that's kind of the point. It's an album that you could even say overplays its riffs and its ideas to the point that you actually almost get lost in how many times is this played through now before I'm at the.
Yeah.
But I also think that's the point. And I weirdly feel that this might be one of the few bands, and I would love to speak to this guy. I almost feel like the songs are driven by the lyrics than they are necessarily with the music. He has a wee story to tell, and as a result of that, the verses will go on as long as it takes to fucking articulate that verse.
Yep.
And I kind of love that about that as well. I think too many bands do it the other way around. So this riff must play 4 times. Now, lyricist guy, everything has to fit in this with the timing and all the rest. Not looking at you, Dave. But I kind of feel like there's a lot of bands that do that, and as a result, there's a reason. Like there's a lot of new metal bands use the word hate and all that in there because it's easy to do and it's got a million rhyming words. You don't get that here. You get a little picture and a wee story, and every song kind of feels like the story that someone would tell you intimately over a warm fire. There's something connective about it. I think the kind of prominence on the drums, and we'll say the production on this is fucking incredible, but the emphasis on like specifically that cadence and the drum work here and the other musical instruments that are present just like fill out things. But the star of the show is the strummy acoustic guitar and the lead vocals. They're kind of gorgeous to listen to. There are moments here I felt he stretched his vocals more than he did on the previous album, and those moments like visibly saw the hair on the back of my neck lift up. Like moments where he would just he'd just go up just for one note, and he would never do it again in the song. You're like, but that's like, he doesn't have to do it again. And that's kind of once again how we tell stories. It's how we communicate. I'm not speaking much about the music, we'll get to it, but we inflect on certain things for prominence, and I get that throughout the way that the songs are delivered. Musically speaking, I don't think he necessarily has, but there's no like polyrhythms or blast beats here. It isn't really stretched that far away from what he'd done before. It feels like a continuation of his previous work, but I would say on top of that as well, I feel like because there's a band environment, he is happier to have sections where there's maybe not vocals as much. I was thinking on the track Feathers, where like the end of that track is like a big instrumental section, which I don't think there was much of that in the previous album. I think it was almost coated wall to wall with, maybe you got a little introduction, but once the vocals kicked in, the vocals would carry to the end. And I put that down to more, there's a band there doing stuff with me, so I can really fill this out and everyone's doing something, so that works its way through. This one is considerably shorter, but is also shorter in terms of length. It's 6 tracks. Majority of the songs here are over the 7-minute mark. It closes on a 10.5-minute opus. And it had me in, like, just all the way through it. Folly What's what I've used this sentence before already, are a really difficult band to recommend. Because I think if you're into kind of more folksy, more kind of intimate, strummy sort of music, you're probably not inclined to listen to 8-minute songs. You're probably used to listening to much shorter form kind of constructs. But because he has that kind of almost post-doom sort of thing that comes in with his style, as a result of that, you are going to get longer form songs here. The single Closer to Life, which I think was the one we reacted to, the first one, is the shortest track here. It's still about 5.5 minutes. And it does wear its structure and formula. Like, all the songs here have a clear, this is the verse riff. The only thing that's different is you don't really know predictably how long it's going to go. So, I don't think he's reinvented the wheel. I like the addition of the band, but I also would have been happy if he didn't have the band. I just think he delivers music in a form which I am acclimated to love. And I think that's what came at the end of it. I think maybe vocally and lyrically there's growth here. Musically there isn't necessarily, but I also don't think that's a negative here. I kind of think he's got his sound. And there's no one else that sounds like him, so he's not in any impetus to change that. I don't even know if that makes sense, but I found that a thoroughly captivating listen. I like really enjoyed this. Really enjoyed this. But once again, like the previous album, I maybe listened to that last 40 Watt Sun album maybe 10 times, and I've had it for over 2 years. But like it has to be, the stars have to align, the time has to be right. I need to be in that right mood, and I need to be able to know for a fact that when I hit play on this one, I ain't hitting stop until it runs out. And this is kind of the same way again, even though the inclusion of the more focused band elements does make it more predisposed to singles. It would fit with the previous album. If it did this stuff live, you could fit some of the other stuff in there. The band can switch in and out, or they could change the composition of some of the songs, or they could do the same here. Whichever way he wants to do it, there's versatile there. I think he's an incredibly talented songwriter. I think lyrically and vocally he's there's different level for me. I think that's the shine for me on what they do is the vulnerability, the frigidity, and the soul bearing nature of his voice, and the way that comes out is kind of captivating. Like, needless to say, I love Little Weight by 40 Watt Sun. Who would have guessed? Did you listen to my previous review? So yeah, I'm glad. I'm also glad we didn't do any more of the singles, because I think I would have come into this having heard half the album. But at the same time, I kind of felt like having listened to that made me like, oh, where we going all the way throughout the album, as opposed to having too much of it out there. So, I mean, it would be surprised me if this guy ever really puts a foot wrong. I think what he's doing kind of leans itself to being, you could argue, safe. But sometimes safe music is great music to both the musician and the listener. As long as you've got something to say and you mean it, which I think he does. Yeah. What about you, Dave?
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad that we didn't do any more than that one single, because as much as I was looking forward to hearing that track again, Closer to Life, I think my first listen to the full album was much more rewarding, not having heard the other singles they'd released. I was probably more invested in it because I didn't really know what to expect. I was, kind of hanging from every lyric and movement that the album made, because 40 Watt Sun has that ability to just kind of keep you with them for the entire journey. I very rarely put a 40 Watt Sun album on and then only listen to a few tracks. Once I play, I'm doing the full album. And it was the same with Little Weight. Like when I was listening to this at home, nothing was deterring me from doing a full listen of this album. Like possibly a fire alarm had it gone off, but most likely I would have burned to death. You know what I mean? I like this side of 40 Watt Sun. I did enjoy hearing him with a more kind of like band. I know he had a band on the previous album, but this had a more band kind of feel to it. Definitely had a bit more of a kind of raw texture. Because the drums are a kind of touch more kind of forward in the mix, you get that kind of stronger kind of pulse and kind of rhythm that you can kind of nod along to. It is probably more in line with Wilder Than the Sky, which was his 2016 album. And like that album, this album sounds incredible. Like the production choices here are very, very rich in tone, very warm, very organic sounding. And Perfect Light had those elements too, but the heavier guitar tone, I say heavier, like slightly more distorted guitar tone, which is basically just a kind of warm fuzz, really. Plus the kind of deeper bottom end really just kind of, it feels like you're kind of wrapped up in a wee blanket. And I felt like I wanted to listen to this in front of an open fire. Like that's how like this should be listened to. But yeah, production was ace. I really liked the natural feel of it. And the band sound very kind of fluid together here. There's no like strict kind of feeling of like a metronome, or like these tracks have been snapped to a grid. You know what I mean? There's a great flow to it. It just seamlessly transitions from track to track. They are all of a similar pace, so nothing sounds like it comes out of left field or disrupts the flow of things. It's just smooth. And again, like most 40 Watt Sun albums, everything feels kind of nostalgic in a weird way, like,
Yeah.
but not dated. It still feels like current, but the atmosphere almost feels like I'm listening to something old, even though I'm not. And like Perfect Light,
timeless.
yeah.
Yeah.
The tracks felt very poignant. There's a ton of emotion kind of seeped from this. I could see a single tear running down the speakers at home. As the
Also,
album played.
I was thinking about this. It must be all credit. Like I was never, when I did vocals, I was just belting out what I could belt out.
Yeah.
There wasn't any real like emotion behind any of that. It was more like focused precision.
Mm-hmm.
This must be exhausting. Like you are bearing what sounds like. Like if let's put it this way. See if he comes up and asks you for a wee fiver. You're giving him a fiver. I mean, he says it like that. You're giving him a tenner. There's something that is something very pleading. I keep coming back to that word, honest. It just sounds. There's no filter. You know what I mean? It just but it must be exhausting to perform that in a set.
Yeah.
Because you're like giving everything. Weird. Yeah.
Yeah. It has this kind of ability to make something so minimal sound meaningful.
Yeah. Yes. Love that.
I think we mentioned this in the reaction, but his voice it definitely feels like it had more range to it on this release. Like his lower register seems to be hitting like a bit deeper. And there are moments on the album where he does push his voice into a higher place. Astoria has quite a few lines where you can hear him really stretch his range. And I really like those moments. I think it added even more kind of distinction to the tracks at times. But whatever he sings, like, it holds your attention. He's got a brilliant kind of storyteller voice. And no disrespect to the band, but kind of Patrick's voice is the main reason that I come back to and I connect with the 40 Sun releases. If you take that out, this album wouldn't be all that interesting. I mean, the music is good, don't get me wrong, but there's no real surprises here. There's no additional extras. And that works to kind of allow you to focus like fully on the vocal. I did think on a couple of occasions it could have been doing with a little something else just to help add a little bit more distinction to a couple of the tracks. I kind of missed that bit of piano that was on Perfect Light. I thought that was a really clever kind of melodic accompaniment to that album. But I realised, maybe he wanted to give this a different feel and really strip it back to just like basic instrumentation. So, that's fine. And that's, it's still great. I think there are some real highlights on this album. The two singles that were released, Closer to Life and Astoria, are both fantastic, and different enough characteristically to really stand out on their own. My other favourite was the album opener, Pour Your Love.
Yeah,
it might be the best track on this album.
It's like ridiculously good for an opening song. You know what I mean?
It really is.
Like you do kind of feel like, I am a heartless bastard. I didn't cry at my wedding. I didn't cry at my dad's funeral, and even I could feel something forming in the corner of my eye. I was like, it's just fucking so goddamn honest.
Yeah. But yeah, just incredible melody. Really, there's some really nice kind of subtle harmonies that just lift that chorus. And even as a drummer, I tend to kind of lock into drums when I'm listening to things, but there's a way that the kind of drummer just kind of slowly kind of drags the drums on that first track, and it just really adds to the vibe. I really enjoyed that. It's 8.5 minutes, but I could have listened to more of it. Like 8.5 minutes didn't feel like anything. And I think the only problem I had was whatever followed it was going to have to really fucking bring it to stay up at that level. And Half a World Away is a really good track. Maybe it didn't quite, hit me as much as the opener did. The closing track I shared kind of similar feelings on. I thought it was really good, but I don't know. I felt like I didn't usually have an issue with the length of 40 Watt Sun tracks. That last one, I felt like the length kind of hindered it a little bit. 10.5 minutes.
I also think we've been listening. The albums that we've been reviewing for this fucking session are all like long form fuckers. You know what I mean? Which probably doesn't help when you're like, oh, come on.
Yeah, True.
10 minutes. Here we go.
Yeah, that one, it was really good. I just felt like it started to become a little bit too cyclical, like it was just in that kind of territory, and I was like, okay, I felt like it maybe could have been wrapped up a little bit quicker. But that aside, I found Little Wait was another kind of 40 Watt Sun album that you can just sit back and just kind of immerse yourself in, which is what you want from this. So what do you think, scoring wise? What you scoring Little Wait?
So I prefer the previous album, even though it's longer. And like I said, some of the arguments that I will use for this against the previous album actually benefit the previous album, almost inverting it. But I don't think this is far off the mark at all. I think as a continue, I would be very surprised if I ever listen to a 40 Watt Sun album and don't just be like... At the end of it, I think there's just something about his specific style of storytelling and songwriting that will just always connect with me. But we do have to grade, which is a cruel function of doing reviews. And as I prefer the previous album, I will knock this down marginally by a 0.5. It's a 4.5 album for me. I think it is... It's another album that I will actually probably come back to this one more than I will the previous one, but I still prefer the previous one over this.
Yeah, I didn't have quite the same bond with this album like I had with Perfect Light. I think Perfect Light is a flawless album. It's just one that just kind of hits me right in the feels every time I listen to it. This is a different sounding album, but like, again, anything this guy puts out, puts his vocals to, is just fantastic. It's instantly recognizable as Patrick Walker, like as soon as you hear it. This is another enjoyable addition to the 40 Watt Sun catalogue. I'm going to go 4 out of 5. I didn't feel it was like quite as up there as Perfect Light, but still really enjoyed it. So 40 Watt Sun and Little Wait out on September 6th on Fisher's Folly. I'll put some links below to the band, to the Bandcamp as well, so you can check out the singles that's been released, and the pre-order and stuff. Let us know what you think. Happy to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. Stick some comments below. That is the review. Thank you for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.